Welcome to Lingua Latina per se illustrata, capitulum sextum, lesson 2. This lesson's called Quo, Unde, Ubi. And this is an important one, and it's probably the most challenging idea in this chapter. But I think after this little tutorial, you'll have it nailed down quite nicely. Let's see what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be covering 3 different ideas in this lesson. The first one is based around the interrogative unde. And we'll see that when we answer that question, unde, that we're going to be using the ablative case. The next interrogative we're going to be learning about is quo. And we'll see that when we answer the question quo, we're going to be using the accusative case. Finally, we're going to be learning about something more about the interrogative ubi. We're familiar with this before from our work earlier in the text, but now we're going to be asking the question ubi and answering with a new case altogether called the locative case. And what all of these things have in common is that they are all expressions of location. Let's go ahead and get started with with unde. So our first topic is built around the interrogative unde. The interrogative unde simply means from where. So if we see in our first question here, unde venit Julius, from where, unde, does Julius come? Venit. Unde venit Julius. In other words, where is Julius coming from? So, meaning he started out here. We're going to see that this is, if you may remember from this picture from an earlier chapter, this is an oppidum, right? So here we have an oppidum. So this is where Julius is starting, and he's coming from the oppidum. So as he's walking here, he's left the oppidum, he's going somewhere else, and so you meet him on the road, and you say, unde venit Julius? Julius. And how do we answer that question? Well, first of all, we're going to use the preposition ab. Ab oppido. Ab oppido. And the way we would phrase that in a sentence is we would say, Julius ab oppido venit. Julius ab oppido venit. And what that means for us in English, the equivalent would be Julius comes from a town. And now you'll notice that with the preposition ab, the noun goes into the what case? The ablative case, right? Julius ab oppido venit. The ablative implies the idea of separation, of movement away from something else. So let's ask that question once again, but let's ask it about Medus. We know Medus has left the villa of Julius, right? So if we were to meet him along the road, we might ask, hey, there's Medus. Unde venit Medus? And we would answer the question again with the preposition ab. And we know that he comes from the villa of Julius. So we would say Medus ab villa Julii venit. Slide those over just a little bit. Ab villa Julii venit. Medus comes from the villa of Julius. We're going to see something a little bit different here now when we ask the question about Cornelius. Cornelius, we may remember, is the friend of Julius. And he has also left a place, but he hasn't left just an oppido or a villa. He's left a specifically named city or town. In fact, he's left the city of Rome. So we'll see that when we answer the question, unde venit Cornelius, and he's coming from a specifically named city or town, we answer slightly differently. How do we answer this question? We answer it, as you can see, without a preposition. No preposition here, just Roma. We retain the ablative ending here, but we have dropped the preposition, and so our answer would look like this. Cornelius Roma venit. And the way we interpret that in our English equivalent would be Cornelius comes from Rome, just like ab villa or ab oppido, but because it's a specifically named city or town, we drop the preposition. So just to summarize that idea, unde venit Julius ab oppido venit. When we're talking about a common place, such as an oppidum or a villa, we answer the question from where, unde, using a preposition, specifically the preposition a, ab. Ab opido, ab villa, from the town, from the villa. But when we're talking about a specifically named city or town, we answer the question unde venit with no preposition. We simply use the name of the city or town in the ablative case. Unde venit Cornelius? Cornelius Roma venit. So now that we've discussed how to answer the question, where are these people coming from? The next logical question would be, where are they going to? To where are you going? And the way that we ask that question is with the interrogative quo. So we'll start with Julius. Quo it Julius? And you might have deduced that it is the verb ire, which means to go. So the way we interpret this question, quo it Julius, is to where does Julius go? And the answer, of course, is that Julius is going to his villa. And so we would answer that, quo it Julius, we'd answer that by saying he's going to his villa, and we would use the preposition ad plus the accusative case to do that. Julius is going ad villam. Ad villam suam, you could say as well. Medus, on the other hand, is not going to a general common place. He's going to a specifically named city or town. In this case, he's going to Roma. So from our discussion about coming from, how do you think this is going to work with going to? If you guess that we drop the preposition and just use the noun, the name of the city or town in the accusative case, you guessed correctly. So if we were to ask quo it Medus, we would say Medus is going Romam, to Rome. Likewise, Cornelius is not going to just a simple generic common place. He's going to a specific place. He's going to Tusculum. So based on the same principle as coming from Rome or going to Rome, if he were going to Tusculum, we would drop that preposition again, so no ad, and we would just use the name of Tusculum in the accusative case, which happens to be Tusculum. So what would our specific answers to these questions look like? Quo it Julius? Quo it Julius? To where is Julius going? We would simply answer Julius ad villam it. Julius is going to, he's going, oops, I want to do that. He's going to his villa. He's going to his villa. Julius ad villam it. So in answer to the question, quo it Medus, however, since he's not going to a common place, he's going to a specifically named city or town, we would drop the preposition ad, and we would just answer Medus Romam it. Medus is going to Rome. Medus Romam it. And likewise, Cornelius is not going to a common place, but rather a specifically named city or town, Tusculum. So we drop the preposition ad, and we answer Cornelius Tusculum it. Cornelius Tusculum it. Cornelius is going to Tusculum. To summarize now, just as we discussed when you're coming from a certain place and you use the noun in the ablative case with the preposition ab, when you're going to a place, a common place, such as a villa or a town, you use the preposition ad plus the accusative case. Quo it Julius, Julius ad villam it. However, when you're going to a specifically named city or town, you still put the noun in the accusative case, the name of the city or town, but you don't use a preposition, no preposition. So if we're going to Rome, Medus Romam it. If we're going to Tusculum, Cornelius Tusculum it. This brings us to our final topic, topic 3, which is all about the question ubi. Now, we're used to this question. It was one of the first questions or interrogative words we learned in chapter 1 of our text. So if we were to ask the question, where does Julius live? Habitare is a new verb for us in chapter 6. It means to live or to dwell. Ubi habitat Julius? We know that Julius lives in his villa. All right. So if we were to answer that question, we'd simply say Julius in villa sua habitat. And then we have our familiar preposition in with the ablative case, in villa sua. But we run into a slightly different situation with Lydia and Cornelius, because we're not talking about the simple common place that they live, like a house or a villa or something like that. We want to say that Lydia, for example, lives in Rome, and Cornelius lives in Tusculum. Again, those are specifically named cities and towns. So what do you want to bet? There's going to be a slightly different way to communicate that idea. Well, if you guessed that there is a slightly different way, you guessed correctly. Let's see how that works. You'll notice that when we wanted to talk about where Julius lives, and we said Julius lives in Villa Sua, that we used a preposition. Well, when we're talking about living in a specifically named city or town, like Julius lives in Rome or Cornelius lives in Tusculum, we are going to drop that preposition. Not only are we going to drop the preposition, but we're going to use an entirely new case, one that is not very common. It's used in only a very small number of cases with a very restricted set of circumstances, but it's new nonetheless. So what we'd want to say, maybe intuitively, Julius lives in Rome, is we'd want to say Julius lives in Roma. But, of course, that's not what we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to, let me move that out of there. We're going to drop the preposition, and we're going to use a new case. The new case is called the locative case. You may recognize that the term locative sounds a lot like location. So I refer to it as the locational case for that reason, because it tells you the place in which someone lives, the specifically named city or town in which someone lives. You'll also notice in just a moment that the locative case has the same ending as the genitive singular. So what would that look like? It looks like this. Julius lives in Rome. We would say Julius Romae habitat. Likewise, if we wanted to say Cornelius lives in Tusculum, intuitively we might say in Tusculo. However, that is not how it's done. The way it's done is we drop the preposition and we use the locational case because this is the place in which the specifically named city or town in which Cornelius lives. So we would say Cornelius lives in Tusculi. You'll notice, once again, both of these are using the familiar genitive singular endings from the first declension and the second declension that we've been using already for so long. So let's see how this works in the context of our questions, ubi habitat Lydia. So here's Lydia. Ubi habitat Lydia. We would say Lydia, she lives in Rome. So we would say Lydia Romae habitat. There's our locative locational case there. And if we wanted to answer the question, ubi habitat Cornelius, we would respond, Cornelius Tusculi habitat. There's our locative locational case there. So here's a great sentence that takes all of these ideas and puts them together in one place. And I would encourage you to study this sentence, to be able to translate it backwards and forwards. And in your exercise, I'm actually going to ask you to give it a shot, to try translating it into English and see if you can navigate all of the bits and pieces. It takes a lot of the things we've learned over the last 6 chapters and puts them together into one sentence. Let me read it for you in Latin. Via Latina est longa, sed medus qui via Latina Tusculo Romam ambulat, fessus non est, nam is ambulat ad Lydiam amicam suam, quae Romae habitat. Think about that and give that a shot in your exercises. We'll also work on it together, of course, in class. In summary, we have discussed 3 main points in this lesson. Unde plus the ablative case, quo plus the accusative case, and ubi plus the locative case. These are all expressions of location. That concludes Lingua Latina per se illustrata, Capitulum Sextum, Lesson 2, Quo, Unde, Ubi. I hope that you have found this helpful. See you in class.